Great. I'd like to say thank you to Giovanni Zanco for the opening, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2017 annual IST-Austria graduation ceremony. My name is Hanya Kover, and I'm the head of the Graduate School Office, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's day. So today's graduation ceremony is really special because it is the first time in the history of IST, and this is the 6th time that we're doing this, that the number of graduates is in the double digits. So since last June, we've had 15 PhD defenses, and 11 of those graduates are joining us here today. And so it's really, I would say, our PhD program is starting to be really productive. So the program for today, just to go over briefly, so we're going to start with a welcome by our president, Tom Hensinger. He's actually stepping in for Nick Barton, our dean, who tried valiantly to be here but is struggling with the stomach flu, so on your programs it will still say his name. We will then hear a keynote speech by Martin Nowak, who is visiting from Harvard University. We then will have the graduation ceremony, an outstanding PhD thesis award, and then a speech by one of the graduates themselves. So with that, I would like to hand over to Tom, who will give the welcome address.
So welcome also from me. As I probably say every year, this is the most important day in the year of an educational institution. This actually, on this day, you, the graduates, you can celebrate after 4 or 5 or more years of hard work. And all the other students can see that it actually can be done. It actually. So now we have, as Hanya already mentioned, this is actually the first year where they have double-digit numbers. So in total, we have actually awarded so far already 32 PhDs, but if one looks at the history, 2012 it was 2, 2013 1, 2014 4, then 6, then 4, and this time 15. So it's really the first real graduation ceremony, I would say. These graduates here today have seen also this institute grow basically over the past several years. It was a very, very different institute when you started, as you surely will remember. I mean, in summer of 2010, we were around 70 employees on campus, I think 3 or 4 professors and research groups. And now we are more than 40 research groups with almost 600 employees. Our graduates also represent the diversity we have here on campus. They represent all of many of our fields: mathematics, computer science, biology, and many different countries, actually 9 different countries. 3 graduates from the Czech Republic, 2 each from Austria, Italy, Germany, and Turkey, and 1 each from Poland, Switzerland, Denmark, and Russia. They also represent the various career paths that our graduates take. 10 of them have moved into research positions, 6 in academia and 4 in industrial research. 3 have moved into business, and 2 are currently still finishing at postdocs, projects as postdocs at IST. The total number of publications by today's graduates is 87. 2 graduates have actually 10 publications each. Impressive. There are 4 graduates today who unfortunately are not here, so I think I will have a slide on each one of them, and I will just briefly read their thesis title. It's Maritza Mori from the Yanovia Group, Optical Functionalization of Human Class A orphan G protein coupled receptors. Maybe I should read this. I can hardly see it, and I don't have it on myself, so maybe. Maritza is currently a postdoc at the Stanford School of Medicine. Maybe next is Jan Schwarz from the 6th group, quantitative analysis of thank you. Cell migration. And Jan is now a postdoc at IBIDI, or IBIDI, a biotech company in Munich. Anastasia Pentina from Christoph Lampert's group is currently still a postdoc at IST, finishing up a project, but since like Christoph, she is currently visiting Google in Zurich, and her thesis, Theoretical Foundations of Multitask and Lifelong Learning. And the fourth, Thomas Pratt from the Frimmel Group, who is currently holds a research position at a private company in the Czech Republic, and his thesis was on the identification of novel regulators of pin polarity and development of a novel auxin sensor. So let's maybe give a hand to all four of them who unfortunately cannot. And now my task is to introduce today's graduation speaker. We're really pleased to have here Martin Nowak. Martin is not only a native of Klosterneuburg, he actually grew up in Weidling across the hill here. He has also been with this institute from the very beginning as a member of our scientific board. And actually one of the main reasons that we have this graduation ceremony adjacent to our scientific board meetings is that we can lure preeminent scientists like Martin to give our graduation speech, even into a small, this year it's already a larger number of graduates. Martin did actually studied biochemistry in Vienna at the University of Vienna, and then switched to mathematics, got his PhD in mathematics in Vienna, and then moved to Oxford, first on a Schrödinger scholarship, and then through the ranks, I think, on various positions in the UK. Became then a professor of mathematical biology before he moved to Princeton. In Princeton, he was the head of the program in theoretical biology at the Institute of Advanced Study. And in 2003, he moved on to Harvard, where since 2003 has been professor of biology and mathematics and the director of the program for evolutionary dynamics. So, I mean, Martin's list of awards and publications is long. I will not take the time away from his speech here to go through this. Let me just say he has written really fascinating books, also readable for a layman, on games and cooperation in biology, especially in evolution. And let's welcome Martin here.
Does this work? So it's always great for me to come back to Austria. And now that we are celebrating your graduation, I'm thinking about my own graduation and the moments that led immediately up to it. So my PhD advisor was Carl Sigmund. And throughout my life, actually, he has remained one of my closest friends. The first thing that I do whenever I come home to Austria is I go for a walk with him in the Vienna forest. A few months before the end of my PhD thesis, he said to me, I think now you could write up. And I looked at him completely surprised. I said, really? And then 3 days later, I gave him my written thesis. And he looked at it from the side and he said, that's not thick enough, and gave it back to me. And then I printed it double-spaced and gave it back to him the next day. And he looked deep in me and said, that's good enough. And then I needed his help. Then I said, so what shall I do next? And he said, well, who knows, but the best person in our field is this guy, Robert May in Oxford. Let's write a letter to him. I needed Carl's help, actually, to write my letter in English, because my English wasn't good enough to write such a letter for application. I think that has changed now with the English-speaking education here, these top institutions in Austria. So the title of my talk is Exceeding Expectations. When IST was founded, the typical Austrian approach was a kind of pessimism, you know, that is very hard also. I remember the first meeting that was held here, and I was present, and there was a leading German university president here. He said, you cannot do this, you cannot start an institution out of nothing. And so many people, so IST has really exceeded all expectations. Something else that kind of has exceeded expectations, does this work? Oops. Is the universe. So the universe has given rise to life. You know, who would have thought that to be the case? And here on this slide is actually one of the biggest mysteries I think that we are knowing. I'm fascinated always by the unknown. You know, you should always remain fascinated by the unknown. So what is known is kind of boring. What is unknown is mystery. Scientists are surrounded by mystery. One of the biggest mysteries is here. The time scale for the unfolding of life on Earth is the same as the time scale for the unfolding of the universe. Why is this? We have absolutely no idea. We just can state it. The universe is 13.7 billion years old. Life on Earth, 3.8 billion years. And this is from a recent paper that I did with a colleague at Harvard, Andy Knoll, and this is the timetable of evolution. Painstakingly, Andy has here written down everything sort of that he thinks as the major events in the evolutionary process. And you see these time scales. Is there a laser pointer here or not? Mm-hmm. This is a laser pointer? Yeah. No.
This one here. No.
Doesn't matter. So oops, but it always advanced. Let's go back to that slide. Yeah, we're back to it. So what you have here on top is the unfolding on this large time scale of 4.5 billion years. These are the great areas sort of life on Earth. And we have the Hadean, the Archean, we have the Proterozoic and the Phanerozoic. And what is marked there in these mysterious large letters, GOE and NOE, is the Great Oxygenation Event and the Neoproterozoic Oxygenation Event. So there were two steps in the history of life on Earth when the oxygen concentration in the atmosphere, in the case of the GOE, increased 1,000-fold. In the case of the NOE, 10 to 100-fold. After you have the GOE, something completely unique happens. For the only time that we know of in life on Earth, one bacterium swallowed another bacterium and it gave rise to something productive. So it was an endosymbiotic event that involved two bacteria, giving rise to the eukarya, giving rise to aerobic lifestyle. The aerobic lifestyle was selected because oxygen was abundant. So the first instantiation of increase of oxygen selected for the aerobic lifestyle, selected for eukarya. The second increase in oxygen, the NOE, selected for the first time for macroscopic life. Before that moment, all life on Earth was microscopic. There's nothing that you could have seen with free eye. Once you have oxygen in the level after the NOE, you select for macroscopic life. So the big question is, why did oxygen increase at particular those time points? And the standard answer would be, well, the oxygen for the GOE was just produced by cyanobacteria, and that determines the time scale. The oxygen for NOE was produced by a combination of cyanobacteria and photosynthetic algae, and that determines the time scale. But actually, cyanobacteria, who also discovered, and that's a second completely unique event, oxygenic photosynthesis, so they discovered the reaction how to split water. They did this several hundred million years before the GOE. After cyanobacteria came into existence, there was a steady state between the oxygen level, between oxygen production and oxygen removal in the atmosphere. And that steady state was unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. Was actually changed by a physical event in the structure of the planet, and this is the formation of the continents. So the thesis that we propose in this paper is the following. The formation of the continent led to the GOE. The breakup of the supercontinent led to the NOE. The fundamental time scale for the unfolding of life on Earth is the change, physical, chemical change in the planet. It's actually the planet that fundamentally determines the time scale. So the radical consequence of that view is that evolution is fast. Evolution is always ready. And the environment has to call the advantageous mutant into existence, has to call it to be advantageous. So evolution is fast and ready. The planet calls distinct life forms into existence at specific stages in the development. So as soon as the oxygen level increased, for example, you select for aerobic lifestyle. As soon as the oxygen level increases the second time, you select for macroscopic life. The potential would have been there before. Therefore, what we are proposing here is the view that stars make chemistry at particular stages in their life cycle, and planets make life forms, make biology at particular stages in their life cycle. Not all planets make life, some planets make life, not all stars give rise to all the heavy elements. And then we unfold, there's a slightly messed up slide here, but we unfold the time scale again from the very, very end, and we see the fundamental time scale for actually IST. So by the same idea, IST was called into existence when the environment was ready for it, and it was founded in 2009. And then the most important productions of an institution are the graduate students. And here we have the same of the famous IST sequence of 2, 1, 4, 6, 4, and 15 that Tom actually mentioned. And yesterday I looked up in Mathematica and also in Pascal's triangle if we can actually find a generating function for the IST sequence, but I think that's still an open mathematical problem. Cooperation is needed for construction. So we go from prebiotic chemistry to cells, to bacteria, to eukarya, to complex multicellularity, to insect society and people as the fundamental creative steps in the evolutionary process. And I have argued that this is not only done by competition, not only done by natural selection, but cooperation is fundamentally involved as an architect in the creativity of the evolutionary process. And I call this evolution by natural cooperation. And in the same token, cooperation is also needed for a scientific career. The scientific career starts with the language acquisition of a child. That's not painful, that is actually automatic, and it doesn't really hurt. And it's the biggest intellectual task, I think, that all of us perform in their lives. Everything else is derivative of that. But then you have to force children to go to school, you have to indoctrinate them, you have to force them to read and write. It's kind of that's painful. But after school, depending where you go to school, it's sort of easy or hard. In Austria, that was actually the hardest. The university was trivial afterwards. You go to university, then you have a PhD, postdoc, professor, president. Not all of us need to become presidents, but some of us become presidents. And I tell you that I always had a very, very good relationship with my advisors, both for diploma thesis, PhD, and postdoc. And I can actually tell you that all my advisors became presidents of something. And this is causally related in some sense. And I think what you have today is definitely an all-time high in your career. It's sort of a moment where you think, wow, this feels great. All-time high in the sense of the stock market. The US stock market had an all-time high last week and before and so on. And at this all-time high, the advice that I would like to give you is that you should remain true to your calling. You should ask yourself always, what is it that you're good at, and do exactly that. And don't do something else. Don't do the other things that people ask you to do. Reject compromises. Accept jobs only if they feel perfect. And go to conferences, learn what other people are doing, but do the opposite. And I think it would be naive if I would wish you that every day of your life should be an all-time high, but I definitely wish you that there are many all-time highs in your life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin, for that excellent keynote speech. Okay, so the next part of the ceremony is the actual graduation ceremony. And just to explain how this is going to work, I'm going to ask each student's supervisor to the stage. The supervisor will give a short laudation of the student. The student and the supervisor will then meet on this bridge, which symbolizes the rite of passage from student to graduate. And then they're going to move over to here where Tom, in place of Nick, will hand over the actual PhD certificate. All right? So I'd like to start with our first student, who's going to be Sebastian Novak. And Nick is his supervisor, but since Nick isn't there today, I'll ask Kalin to the stage to give the laudation.
Hi, everyone. You'll see me a few times today portraying different people. Sebastian joined IST in 2011 with joint degrees in music and biomathematics. He has been remarkably productive with approximately 8 papers published and more in progress. A sign of his productivity is that it is getting hard to count the exact number. He had the remarkable skill of turning every rotation project into a paper. Thus, his works covered a wide range from host pathogen dynamics to game theory to stress-induced mutagenesis. Indeed, it was not possible to fit all of them into a single thesis. It is true that the central question of his thesis, whether fluctuating environments can maintain variation in complex genetic traits, remains unsolved. However, we have to leave something for future generations to do. In addition to his academic work, Sebastian continued his musical activity, organizing concerts and performing his own arrangements, and covering a wide range of musical styles. He is now working as a consultant in the car industry and will no doubt soon sort out their problems.
All right. All right, our second graduate of the day is Torsten, and Torsten is actually Tom's student, and so Tom will give the next laudation.
Yes, Torsten. Torsten got his bachelor and master's degree at Saarland University in Germany before he joined IST in 2012. And he did his PhD in 4 years, working on the verification of concurrent programs. His thesis title was The Automatic Synthesis of Synchronization Primitives for Concurrent Programs. And what can I say about Torsten? Mostly that he has really impressed me with his efficiency. I think 4 years, 4 papers, and a PhD. That's very well done. And I'm hoping, I'm just hoping many of my other students will be as efficient. Now he's a research engineer at AIT. That's an institution that has a similar name like we is in Vienna. It's the Austrian Institute of Technology. And they have a large group in dependable systems engineering, and Thorsten is there, a software engineer. So.
All right, so I'd like to welcome Torsten to the stage. Our next student is Murat, and once again, Murat is Nick's student, and so Kalin will do the laudation.
Yeah, Nick again. Murat was one of the first cohort of 7 students who started at IST in 2010, a brave step, since we had not even opened the first lab building then. Murat was also brave in making a radical switch from physics, which he had studied in Turkey and then in Mallorca, to evolutionary biology. Murat moved into the new field very well, and developed an original model for the evolution of gene regulation. He combined a biophysical model for the binding of a transcription factor to DNA with an evolutionary model for the change in the binding sequence over time. This led to novel predictions for the dynamics of regulatory evolution. The model has been taken upon by several groups now and is receiving quite some attention. Murat has now moved on to a postdoc in cancer research, learning a yet new field, bioinformatics.
Our next student is Georg Rieck, who is a student of Gasper, who unfortunately is also not available today, and so the valiant Kalin will take over the laudation.
All right. Let me find this one. Gasper now. Dear Georg, congratulations on your PhD thesis, also at this more formal occasion. It was a pleasure to work together in the days when our group was just starting out and was still very small. I have been trying, and either failing or perhaps succeeding only at glacial pace, to recreate that cozy small group setup. What I hope hasn't changed since you were here, though, is the opportunity for the students to try out completely new things, take full advantage of the interdisciplinary spirit at IST, and find out what they'd really like to do after they graduate. In this respect, you have been the role model of a theorist who first moved into biophysics and later got engaged from your own motivation and interactions with fellow students in experimental work that was both very productive during your PhD as well as forming the basis of your research today. I wish you many successes in the future. Kasper.
Our next graduate for today is Isaac, who is supervised by Uli.
Yes, so Isaac was born in Switzerland and did his undergraduate degrees at EPFL. And he also started his PhD there in 2012. And I'm very glad that when I moved here, I could convince him to join, albeit maybe somewhat reluctantly in the beginning. But Isaac worked on a topic at the interface of two areas of mathematics, and let me not go into details, but let me just say that in his thesis he created what people consider a major breakthrough that led to the refutation of one of the longest standing conjectures in this area. And I think as a supervisor I can just say that I cannot think of a more inspired, hardworking, creative student. I think it's really every supervisor's dream to have such a student. And yeah, the one thing that maybe you should also know about Isaac is that he's immensely fond of several things. First of all, cats. And yes, so I need to embarrass you a little bit. And secondly, all things Japanese, which meant that every time we went for dinner with the group, it was usually sushi. Anyway, so I'll stop here.
Our next graduate from this year is Morten, who is supervised by Chris Boyton.
So I first met Morten when he emailed me while I was on my honeymoon with some questions about fluid simulation, and I thought they were really great, and so I asked him to join the group because I was just starting this new job at IST. So eventually he joined the group as my first PhD student at IST. And he immediately began working on an algorithm that combined some recent breakthroughs in two different areas, fluid simulation and shape alignment. And he successfully developed the first method for aligning shapes while taking into account topological changes. This work was accepted to the top journal in our field within the first year that he was on campus, so that was great for both of us. And the next year he did it again. He worked like crazy to discover an interesting interpretation of boundary conditions to Navier-Stokes equations. And published this at the top journal again. And afterward, Morten developed a really ambitious plan for what he called resimulation. So if you already know the solution to one differential equation, how can you exploit that knowledge to solve a similar equation as efficiently as possible? So he basically was able to solve a first step in this direction, which involved coming up with really special boundary conditions to liquid simulations. And he published the work at the top journal in the field. So Morten's dissertation combined all of these works into some like three top works in the field, and he won the Eurographics Best PhD Thesis Award, which is an award given by given to the best computer graphics dissertation in Europe each year. So this is quite an achievement, and he should be really proud of it. After finishing his PhD, Morten was immediately hired by Autodesk Research, which is a research lab, and he's now working alongside some of the best-known researchers in our field. So I'm really proud and grateful to be Morten's academic advisor, and I'm overjoyed to present him with a PhD.
Our next student is actually Przemek, who is Tom's student, so I'll keep him right here.
Przemek got his bachelor degree at the Warsaw University of Technology, and then actually, I didn't even know this, but then apparently a second bachelor, he sent me a CV yesterday, at the University of Southern Denmark. Then went on to a master's degree at the Technical University of Denmark before joining IST-Austria in 2012, and doing his PhD in program testing and verification. His thesis was in logical and statistical methods for property checking, and I think the outstanding characteristics of Przemek's work at IST and his thesis was really the diversity we had in the end. It was not clear what to put in and what to leave off the thesis because there was simply too much different work. And all published at top conferences, so very well done. Przemek then he also decided to try to stay in Vienna, and now has a job as a software developer at Senacor. So, congratulations.
Our next student to graduate was Hande, and I'd like to introduce her supervisor, John.
So I'm going to do something a bit unorthodox. I want to talk about Hande and Pavel in a general statement because they have a lot in common when it comes to being excellent scientists. And then I'll just make some fun of them after that individually. Okay. So it's a pleasure to be back at IST to give praise to my two first students, Hande and Pavel. They struggled, they persevered, they have ambition, they learned and drive, and this has certainly been why you're sitting here now earning your doctorate. I should say, and it was said by Martin, this is not a small achievement. It's an achievement of a lifetime. This is your first step along your career path. That's not to say you won't get other accomplishments, awards, accolades throughout your career. As a matter of fact, I believe you will do. But this really isn't the purpose of science. The purpose of science is pushing forward small steps, big steps, our understanding. And so while I do believe you'll get awards and make me proud, where am I now? Yes, sorry. Yeah, so finally, Hande and Pavel, basically, this is where they have common sort of attributes, which I think made them very successful, is that they pretty much have shown their scientific capabilities to me. They're par excellence, I think. And they basically have everything, you have everything you need to succeed now. Now it's just a matter of you taking control and doing it. Personally, I couldn't be more proud of them as the supervisor. I'm very lucky that they were my first few students. But not only is it my privilege as a supervisor to put on the sash, but It's my privilege to come here as your colleague. Okay, so I'll say a little bit about Hande. So when I took Hande on, I was a bit uncertain, frankly. But the one thing she did is she proved to me that I was wrong, right, in that uncertainty. She was one of that first 7, the cohort of 7, the Magnificent 7, possibly. And she basically came to a place that had no history, right, no academic history. And she really persevered. She struggled because, you know, if you work in the lab, it doesn't always work. She worked exceptionally hard. And one of the most important things, one of the things I enjoyed most about my interactions with you, Hande, is that you stimulated me to think, you stimulated me to excel. Yeah, so let me just make a few personal comments about Pavel. I first met Pavel when he was here while he was doing his master's at Charles University. And I remember explicitly a day that we were standing outside having a cigarette, and he just posed this question: why do leaves have different shapes, right? If you're just collecting light, they could all be round, right? And it's an interesting question, and I think this epitomizes Pavel. He's really sort of hyper-curious, and you can see that in his research, which he had a very, very large hand in. He persevered through difficult times because lab work is difficult, but it's that sort of passion, that sort of young child's curiosity, which I don't think he'll ever lose, and which will drive him to do excellent science in the future, as he's done in the past.
Our next student to graduate was Vanessa, and her supervisor CP is also not here, and so I'd like to once again welcome Kevin.
My last role, CP. Vanessa has been an outstanding team player, resulting in co-authorship on 4 papers from the lab over the last several years. Her own work is very original by trying to link the gene regulatory pathways controlling cell fate specification with the physical systems determining cell and tissue morphogenesis, and will hopefully be published within the coming months. For her postdoc, she would like to move a bit into evolutionary biology, which when combined with biophysics, genetics, and cell biology is a very smart and promising decision. And I actually want to add a few words of my own to all these roles I played, given that we have quite a few of, as John put them, the Magnificent 7 students, and to actually latch onto a remark that Martin made at the very beginning, that some German professor said that you cannot start something out of nothing. And it's true. You cannot start anything out of nothing without pioneering spirits. And what is a pioneer? And I found something very telling today that was actually written about the pioneers of flight. And I think it's very telling because, you know, you guys are taking your flight, you're taking off, and this institute is also taking off. And this is very relevant for this institute as well as a pioneering institution. So a pioneer is someone who sees potential, an innovator who is willing to try new things. A pioneer pushes boundaries to advance a cause or idea or break a record. Pioneers have experienced successes in their field, sometimes by overcoming great challenges.
And the last student to graduate in this past year, he actually just graduated a few weeks ago, is Michal. And so I'd like to ask Vladimir to come to the stage.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm the last one, so I'll try to be brief. So I will not talk about the scientific achievements of Michal, although I believe they're quite impressive. So instead, I just want to say one thing about him. So from the very beginning and throughout his whole PhD, it was very clear that Michal is really passionate about anything related to mathematics and the problem solving. And his constant involvement in Math Olympiads is just one example of that. Actually, he's really passionate about many other things, like dancing, football, travel, teaching, you name it. Yeah, but that's a separate story. Anyway, this passion for math was kind of a really good fit for my group, and it was really fun these years that we spent, that we worked together. And I can just say thanks for joining my group and best wishes for the future.
So those were all of the graduates that depended in the last year, and as you, I think, heard from all of the supervisors, they've all done outstanding work while they were here. But we do actually also have an outstanding PhD award, which is a very difficult thing to decide on, and so I'm going to hand over to Vladimir, who's the chair of the award committee.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's me again. Okay, so as you may know, this is the second time that IST awards the outstanding PhD thesis, the nominations are made by PhD supervisors, and then the winner is selected by the committee, consisting of 5 faculty members, 1 student representative, and 1 postdoc representative. So this year, actually, we had relatively few nominations, but they were all really of very good quality, in my opinion. And it is really unfortunate that only 1 thesis could be selected for this award. Actually, the committee spent a lot of time discussing different theses, but in the end we had to make a decision. And yes, I'm now happy to announce that the winner of the Outstanding PhD Thesis Award is Anastasia Pentina from the group of Asia works in theoretical machine learning, and the title of the thesis is Theoretical Foundations of Multitask and Lifelong Learning. So she had a very productive time here, so she published 6 papers in top machine learning and computer vision conferences. Actually, 2 of the papers were without this supervisor. So let me just give 1 quote from the nomination letter by Christoph Lampert. So in summary, Asia's PhD thesis is of outstanding scientific quality. The contents emerged from research done fully at IST-Austria and within almost exactly the 3 years that our graduate school suggests as duration for a PhD in the formal sciences. Therefore, this thesis can act as an excellent role model for future generation of PhD students, and it absolutely deserves the outstanding PhD thesis award. So the next stage is actually the actual award, but I'm really sorry to say that Asia is not here, and Christoph is also not here. They're both actually currently at Google in Zurich. So Yes, so this is, I can just show you. Yes. So here you get that property. So what I can do right now is just to read a statement from Asia. Okay, so she wrote the following. So it is a great honor for me to receive this award. I'm grateful for this recognition of the work I have done, as I believe that every graduate at this ceremony deserves to be distinguished with this award. Unfortunately, I cannot be at IST today because I'm on a scientific visit at Google Zurich. But I would like to use this chance to express my gratitude to everyone who helped me reach this stage. PhD at IST has been an amazing experience for me. I met great people and I got to know about quite a few unexpected things like development of a zebrafish embryo. I would like to thank everyone for creating such an excellent, inspiring atmosphere here on campus. And of course, I would like to thank my supervisor, Christoph, for teaching me all aspects of doing research, for granting me freedom, and at the same time, having time and patience to help me cope with the consequences. It was a great pleasure and an honor for me to be part of IST. So thank you, everyone, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Vladimir, and congratulations to Asia. The next part of the program is the speech by Pavel on behalf of the graduates.
So, hello everyone. I was asked to say a few words for us, graduate students. In fact, everyone of us was asked, and I did not say no loud enough, so I'm standing here right now. And as I'm not very eager of giving talks or speeches like this, I let some photos speak for me. So this, maybe I can try to use the controller. This is a picture from a retreat. It was shortly after I joined the institute. I joined in 2011, and this is from 2012, and it was much smaller. Like there was only this building and the lab, Bertalanffy lab building, and just construction works around. So it was kind of new place to start studying. And as you can see, it's me, and I had over there, I had quite high expectations, and I have to say, IST exceeded my expectations. And back then, we were relaxed, we were enthusiastic and happy, and we started doing our rotation projects. We started working in the lab or doing some other work, either together or on our own. It was not always easy. Sometimes it was kind of frustrating and difficult. As you can see, the results we were getting were not always as expected. We learned that this is a part of this scientific life, of the part of the process, part of the challenge and the adventure. So we discussed the results with our great supervisors, and at least I have to say, and now I speak for myself, but I believe I also speak for all the other students, that they always led us the right direction. So eventually we got some results and learned how to properly present them in a scientific way. And it was, at least for me, it was a great adventure. But it was not only about science. There was also some other skills we had to learn and survive. For example, we learned mining iron, which was a very useful skill for a PhD. We also learned sledging, and it was not very safe, as you can see. The next picture. That was a tough selection process. besides that, we learned to play table soccer, and some of us mastered that skill into like an unbelievable level. We also learned, or at least I learned, how does it feel to have a mustache for 1 month? Proper mustache. This was a charity initiative, I think 2 years ago. May not be very visible because I'm blonde and I have a mustache. And also I learned diversity of beer tastes here at the IST bar. And this was very interesting. I learned something about how the construction of new institute is funded. For example, this lovely staircase is apparently sponsored by the Ministry of Silly Walks. They want to keep it secret, so they removed the sign after a few weeks. So after we learned all that, and apparently we managed to maintain some level of sanity, I can say that for me it was a great experience to join this drawing institute in like 5 years ago, 2011. And then along the way I learned a lot, and I'm very grateful I could be part of this drawing environment. I could interact with all the people here. It was very inspiring. So I believe I'm now speaking for all of us, all the graduates. And I have to thank my supervisors, both Nick Barton and John Balbeck, because they let me to learn the hard way, to keep finding, to go after my questions and after my childish curiosity and find the answers. And I learned that this is worth. And with this, I would like to thank you all that I could interact with you for the past 5 years, and I hope I'll see many of you in the future again. And I also thank all my PhD students and colleagues for everything we went through together. So, thank you.
For the very nice speech. So we've almost arrived at the end of our ceremony. I just want to say one last thing, which is we're really interested in staying in touch with all of our alumni now that they're starting to be more and more. And so we have a new alumni relations manager, and she's put together an alumni website, which I mentioned here. It went live today. It's all brand new. And if you go on there, you can start to see profiles of our graduates. There will be pictures of the ceremony. And so I really encourage you guys to check it out. As the final sort of piece in our ceremony today, I'd like to introduce the IST choir, who are going to sing a song for us, a piece for us that is called Abschied vom Walde by Mendelssohn, which is sort of, you know, goodbye to the forest, which is very appropriate.
Oh,
Thank you very much to the choir for their beautiful ending. Congratulations to the graduates. Thank you to the supervisors. And thanks to all of you for celebrating with us. You're all invited to join the champagne reception outside to talk more with the graduates.